Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Two Nates on Sports. My name is Nathan Simmons, and joining me this week is our resident MLB expert, Evan Tenenbaum, here to discuss a very busy week in wheelings and dealings and winter meetings and closed-door negotiations. Let's start with the biggest one. Giancarlo Stanton, reigning NL MVP, is now in the AL with a certain team that is known for trying to go for big hitters.
Um, can you redo that? The just the last part.
Let's start off with the biggest trade. Giancarlo Stanton, the reigning NL MVP, is no longer in the NL. Where has he moved to, Evan?
Yeah, he's on the Yankees now, guys. The evil empire is back. You know that rebuild that they were talking about? Yeah, 1 year, perfectly fine. They're gonna, you know, okay, 1 year, they're perfectly fine with that rebuild. John Carlos Stanton, um, had this mega contract that was still owed to him that he signed in the 2014 season back in the previous ownership with Florida with the Miami Marlins. Um, Currently, he's owed $295 million over the next 10 years, and Miami was scrapping everything down, looking to sell that contract. Um, I guess as a means of starting over with the new ownership. Um, Yankees were basically the only ones to take on the most money that they were looking at. And this is quite a long story for the history of this deal going down. Deals were in place for St. Louis and San Francisco. They had specific prospect pools that Miami was looking for. Stan had this no trade clause and denied it. Denied both of these teams. He had published a wish list the night before that the trade went down, for all these teams that were in the AL and NL championship series last year. Um, and in the end, it was the New York Yankees who pulled, I guess, a decent enough prospects for Derek Jeter and the owners to pull the trade. So the Marlins get Starlin Castro and prospects Jorge Guzman and Jose Devers, um, and only have to pay $30 million of remaining on Giancarlo Stanton's contract here. Um, Honestly, this is a really bad deal for the Marlins. Um, they completely screwed themselves when they signed this mega contract for Giancarlo Stanton, and still they lost this trade. In my opinion, like you're looking at the NL MVP, who, aside from the year before, it's put up mega stats every single year. He was 7.8 WAR last year. He had 59 home runs. You don't expect him to really regress that much. And even over a 10-year period, you're going to get results after at least half of them at this point. He's still relatively young, in the prime of his career. Um, and the Yankees just landed the NL MVP, and you pair that with a young player like Aaron Judge or Gary Sanchez, like it has the makings of death row, assuming that Aaron Judge can improve his strikeout rates and things like that. Um, Yankees really did not give up that much, and I honestly think that the Miami ownership should have been asking for more. Well, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, that's probably the most controversial aspect of this is that a lot of people are now saying that there's some sort of like collusion just because of how bad this deal is for the Miami Marlins. Derek Jeter, like I don't know, I don't know if he's just doesn't have the competitive fire that he had as a player when it comes to being an owner, but I mean he barely got any sort of semblance of anything of value for Giancarlo Stanton. He didn't get anyone in the top 5 rankings for prospects from the Yankees, I believe. And on top of that, too, like I mean, like you'd think that they'd at least like be able to get someone like a Clint Frazier back in the deal. And I know, granted, like the big reason that they wanted to get rid of Giancarlo Stanton to begin with is because of that contract, but they still ended up covering quite a lot of it, from what it sounds like. And so I just find myself just sort of like just completely beside myself, because I remember back in 2011, 2012, really wanting the Rangers to trade for Giancarlo Stanton and just like debating like, hey, uh, Jurickson Profar plus like X amount of players should get it done. And this was also back when Jurickson Profar was considered the number one prospect in all of baseball. And so just to see them just turn around and just completely be uncompetitive with Giancarlo Stanton to begin with, and then to trade him away for basically just a few prospects here or there that are not even that highly regarded right now. I mean, you're not even really able to say that you were able to start a rebuild. You're just selling off assets uh, to contenders for really no reason, and we're not reason, but for really no big return. And it's really hard to justify this deal if you're a Miami Marlins fan or
It
Miami Marlins personnel. Go ahead.
it's kind of like um, it's weird to see because a lot of the times we praise these kinds of rebuild style trades that you trade one of your best players and get good prospects. This just feels like an insane overreaction, or it's reminiscent of all those fire sales that the Florida Marlins had back, after their World Series titles. So it just feels weird. Your best player in that return is Starlin Castro, who had prospect in Chicago and got cast out there, and ended up in New York, and was just a very average player. Like, you're going to get that average player back in return? And if you're Starlin Castro, you want to prove now that you were worth that deal. I don't think you'll ever do that unless you win an MVP at this point. I don't know. Miami ownership was just kind of really weird, and just by the way, Derek Jeter acts more like a face rather than a majority owner. So he's getting a lot of criticism for this trade from Miami fans and all baseball fans alike. Really, he really doesn't have a percentage say that's as big as people think it is. But I would have to imagine he was specifically designed to take the heat for this kind of thing. And you're looking at that Miami team now, who was kind of close to 500 last year. Maybe a certain pitcher, one certain pitcher would have been the one to maybe tip them in their favor and get a wild card spot. But of course, the one that we were thinking of had tragically died half a season before. So it's in my mind, it's amazing to think what could have happened had Jose Fernandez still been on this team. Could this team still have been, a semi 500 team, maybe add a couple pitchers and make a wild card spot at this point? But now this team is going nowhere for years to come.
Yeah, no, this team's just spinning its wheels, and I mean, like you brought up the previous trades before that the Marlins did with rising talent after World Series wins. But I mean, like, even with the Miguel Cabrera trade, like, they got back Cameron Maybin, who at the time was considered a a can't miss prospect. I mean, with this one, like, no one's saying that about Guzman or the other guy. Like, these are just, like, I wouldn't say fringe prospects, but not exactly top 100. So I mean, it's just completely befuddling. But I think at the end of the day, like, we have to focus more on just like, what do you think the New York Yankees are now a front runner to win the World Series?
I don't know about the World Series, but they're easily the AL East favorites at this point. There were a couple of regressions on Boston's side. Toronto's an aging team. Baltimore's an aging team. Tampa's kind of in this middle ground. So, I mean, if you expect back-to-back years from some of the players on New York, and if you have Aaron Judge not be second half Aaron Judge, and if you have Gary Sanchez be last month of 2016 Gary Sanchez and Giancarlo Stanton, like you're looking at a really, really good Yankees team that's going to be tough to beat in the playoffs. As far as the Marlins side, like any veteran players are hoping now that they can get traded. There was one of the rumors going around that had Stanton not accepted whatever trade or deal or whatever, that he would be the rest of the team would be traded and he would be stuck on the Marlins for life, I guess is what the quote was. Sounds like a punishment now. But in the end, that Stan called the bluff and he got traded. And you're looking at some of those other players now. Marcell Ozuna got traded to the Seattle Mariners. Funny enough to play outfield. Sorry, let me redo that because he didn't get traded to the Mariners. Some of these other players ended up jumping ship and they also got traded. You have D. Gordon, who got traded to the Seattle Mariners, and he's going to be playing outfield for some reason instead of second base. And you got Marcell Ozuna also traded to the St. Louis Cardinals. So, I mean, Miami is a jumping ship at this point. Basically, the only player right now is Christian Yelich that's garnering interest from a few teams. After that, this Marlins team's a hollow shell, and it's kind of sad to see.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I mean it's just so frustrating to see one team essentially sort of just like punt like 5 years, and just like it's. I mean, as someone who wants to see interesting baseball, like now it's like, well, whenever the Miami or Marlins are on, I'm not interested. Like it's just like, yeah. But let's move on now to within the AL West to the most vaunted rival of the Texas Rangers, who made quite a few moves, arguably one of the biggest ones being an international signing. Evan, take it away.
Yeah, the Los Angeles Angels won the Shohei Ohtani bid in the posting, which I guess may come as a surprise because the media was all hyped about Seattle or San Diego winning the bidding for him. Texas had their own shot. They were one of 7 teams that had gone through, I guess, the quote unquote first round when the Shohei had like these little questionnaires for these teams, and the Rangers were one of them. And then they were allowed to negotiate with them, and their advantage was they had the most international pool money to be able to offer Shohei Ohtani. I think they had until the last day where Seattle traded other fringe prospects for pool money. The Rangers were up at least $1 million on every other team. But in the end, it really didn't matter apparently to Shohei Ohtani how much money, because why care about money when you can play with Mike Trout, probably the best player in the American League right now. But now you're thinking with I'll cut that out. It doesn't matter. The best player in the American League right now. So Shohei Ohtani is now Los Angeles Angel. So what are your quick thoughts on Shohei Ohtani being on the Angels?
It stinks. Was really looking forward to us trying to get Shohei Ohtani. Really wanted Shohei Ohtani on this team, but I mean, it hurts a lot more that he's now on like one of the teams that I genuinely loathe. And I mean, look, I don't think that Shohei Ohtani would have saved the Rangers or anything like that. But I mean, like, shoot, like him going to the Angels and giving a good 1-2 punch of him and Garrett Richards is, I mean, I don't think this is going to necessarily put the Angels as front runners for the AL West, just because again there's already the Houston Astros. But I mean, this clearly does improve them, as well as quite a few of the other dealings that they've made that we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, I mean, like, I guess hats off in a way to Angels, to the Angels for pulling this off. But I mean, also just like, man, screw them.
I'm not as optimistic as you are about this. Now, I'm not going to deny that Shohei Ohtani is a kind of a talent, a wonder of talent. Um, there have been, I guess, rumors or issues springing up about how he had a what was it? Let me open up this tweet. There are rumors about him having a damaged UCL that was disclosed to all these teams, and um, it comes off to me as still it's still worth it to take him even with injured at this point because you have him under control for so long. But the issue is if he's going to try and play through this, like how long is his career going to really last with both hitting and pitching when he's already coming in with a damaged UCL? And if he damages it any further in his first year, he could get Tommy John, and that puts him out of commission for a year and a half. You know, contract wise, that's not a huge deal because he's not going to be paying that much. But he's not going to be paid that much. But uh, you know, how are you going to fix your rotation with another injury-prone starter? You're looking at that LA Angels rotation. Garrett Richards has come back, but he's been hurt for the last couple seasons. JC Ramirez has also been one of those. Parker Bridwell's a young, up-and-coming starter who had a decent enough rookie season, but his peripherals may suggest he may regress. And after that, like you're throwing starters at a wall at this point. Like Tyler Skaggs is not what he used to be. Um, I'm trying to think some of the other pitchers that they got. I might just cut that out after some of the other starters are crap. So you're really looking at maybe Garrett Richards and Shohei Ohtani as the 1-2 punch, but just a bunch of barren question marks on the other side. So I'm not technically sold on this rotation as much. I am more sold on some of the offensive moves that the Angels have made. The Detroit Tigers fully committing to their tank, trying to trade away their vets except for Miggy. Ian Kinsler is now a Los Angeles Angel, playing second base and replacing Cam Bedrosian. Sorry, not Cam Bedrosian. Why did I say Cam Bedrosian? I put his name in the thing here.
Yeah.
Okay. He's going to play second base, replacing Danny Espinosa, which significantly improves the infield defense on the Angels. Not necessarily their offense. He has slipped a little bit in his offense, but he's still an above average player at this point. Ian Kinsler with 1 year left on this contract, like significantly improves this Angels team, as does getting Frazier from the Cincinnati Reds to play third base. So this Angels team is getting scarier.
Yeah, and you forgot to also mention Cozart, who's coming off an All-Star season.
Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I said Frazier. I meant to say Cozart.
Okay, start again.
All right, let me rephrase. So they get Ian Kinsler on this 1 year deal, which is good for them. They also add Zach Cozart from the Reds. So I mean this offense is looking a lot scarier now with Trout in the outfield, Trout and Calhoun in the outfield, and you got Gold Glove Andrelton Simmons and Ian Kinsler in the infield with their defense, and Shohei Ohtani that can play. So this offense is looking very competitive.
For sure, they've definitely reloaded and have actually built like a decent team around Mike Trout. I mean, the big problem now going forward is just like how does this team gel, and whether or not some of these players can avoid any sort of regression. I mean, Cozart in particular is someone that's coming off career highs in basically everything, as well as finally becoming an all-star. But at the same time, like prior to that, like he wasn't exactly super consistent in previous seasons. So yeah, I mean, like he might be a candidate due for regression. But that being said, like yeah, as you said, this is a very scary lineup and a very scary team now. But at the same time, do you think they've done enough to make it to the playoffs?
They're wild card favorites at this point, but like I said, they're after Garrett Richards and Shohei Ohtani. I don't know how their rotation is going to spawn, and they may need to work a couple more deals out this offseason in order to shore up the back end of their rotation, in order for me to feel confident in them doing that. And I'd rather honestly they not, so it gives the Rangers a little bit more chance.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they need back end starters, like they could always ask us.
Yeah, I guess we could talk about that now.
Yeah,
The Rangers losing out on Ohtani, it didn't really go into our plans. There was like a separate pool of money that we were going to use on Ohtani anyway. It didn't really affect how our offseason plans were going to go. But the Rangers added a couple of back end starters over the last week and a half. First would be Mike Minor, a 3-year deal. Mike Minor's kind of an interesting situation where he hasn't started in about 3 years. He was with the Atlanta Braves, was actually a really good middle of the rotation pitcher, got hurt, had Tommy John for 2 seasons. He was out, and last year he signed a 1-year bounce back deal with Kansas City and was amazing as a reliever. And so the Rangers kind of are in this position where they can use him as either a starter or a reliever. And you know, if he doesn't have the stuff to be a starter anymore, he could easily bounce back and go into the bullpen and be like a long inning, multi-inning guy, which is an interesting situation. It's kind of a risky move in the sense that you're giving him 3 years. So I'm not really sure how to feel about that. And then coming in last night, the Rangers also traded for Matt Moore from the San Francisco Giants. They gave up a couple of fringe prospects, including one Sam Wolf, who is probably projects as a bullpen piece, but he's been hurt, and he'll be out for half the season coming next year. So I personally think this is an okay trade, considering Matt Moore has regressed even further than Mike Minor at this point. He also got Tommy John, came back, split time between Tampa and San Francisco in 2016. Was a decently okay pitcher, and last year had such a disappointment with the Giants. It's going to be hard to project if he's going to have a bounce back, especially 2 years removed from Tommy John at this point. But it seems that the Rangers, with all these moves that they've made so far, and I consider that they're not done looking for starting pitching on the market at this point. You know, Doug Fister, Mike Minor, Matt Moore, and if you put with the 2 pitchers that they already have right now, this pitching staff would have been excellent in 2013. But this is a bunch of guys that are, you know, they're coming off injuries or bad years, and you're taking the gamble for them to bounce back, and it's kind of weird to see. What are your thoughts on some of these moves that the Rangers have made?
well, I think you summed it up. It's very weird to see. I mean, like, yeah, like I would have been super stoked for this rotation back in 2013, but it's not that year anymore. You know, Matt Moore posted a 5.52 ERA last year. It was just absolutely atrocious for the San Francisco Giants. And I like Mike Minor just seems like a huge risk, especially for 3 years. But I don't want to say huge risk in terms of just like, oh, like he might be a complete like dud or anything like that. But I mean, if you sign someone to 3 years with that type of money, you want to hope that they at least are able to start for part of it. Especially since that was probably the big big reason why Mike Minor decided to come to Texas was because we promised to at least like give him a chance to become the starter. But yeah, with these three moves, including the Fister move, I mean, it to some extent, at least I can say like it's nice that they're trying to invest in the starting rotation. Not necessarily trying to get like the top rotation pieces, but like going out and just getting some solid starters. I mean, that's nice to see. But I mean, like this. I mean, this Rangers team, like if it wants to contend, especially now, has to go get that top of the rotation pitcher because I mean, Cole Hamels is not that anymore. Martin Perez is never going to be that. And the rest of these guys, again, it's no longer 2013. But I mean, at least they have some solid depth amongst their starters.
And like I said, I don't think they're done necessarily. The thing about these moves is they are low budget. Like you're not breaking the bank for these. They're paying all those three pitchers less than they pitched. They paid Andrew Cashner last year. So they still have a little bit of room left to spend. It may if they get one more high profile star, whether it be Darvish or Cobb or Lynn or whoever else. Like this starting pitching market is still wide open. I would have thought it would have gone faster after Ohtani got plucked, but there's still plenty of those out there. So they have plenty of time to make up their minds. As it stands right now, this rotation is very average. Like I would not give it a good grade. I would not give it a bad grade. Just stands very average, and it's acceptable. I guess as to say, I wouldn't claw my eyes out at watching this 5-man rotation, like I would with Nick Martinez and AJ Griffin and company last year. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. These guys could all, have better seasons, and if the team's out of contention, they're easily flippable. So that'll be interesting to see. Other Rangers news: they also signed a couple of relievers, re-signing Tony Barnett, who they had initially had non-tendered, or they initially declined an option on. So they re-signed him, and they also signed Chris Martin, not the Coldplay Chris Martin, but a different Chris Martin,
Yeah,
from the Nippon Ham Fighters.
they got their Nippon Ham fighter, man.
Yeah, that's their alternate for Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah,
Chris Martin, who had thrown 88 innings over 2 years with the Nippon Ham Fighters, with a 1.12 ERA. So he's kind of trying to fulfill that role of pitchers who had failed in the MLB, went to Japan for a couple years and came back kind of role. Colby Lewis kind of comes to mind in that. Miles Michaelis also is starting to do that. He got signed by the Cardinals. I really wanted the Rangers to sign him, but that's besides the point. But Chris Martin kind of fills that role. And he fits into this relief squad with Tony Barnett as kind of back end pieces. And we'll have to see the volatility of relievers if this ends up being a good move or not.
Yeah.
All right, you want to move on to the Astros?
Yeah, let's move on to that.
All right, you do it.
Let's now move on to the world champions, Houston Astros, who have let quite a few of their players go. What's your take?
Yeah, basically the couple of free agents that they had aren't really coming back. Mike Fiers, who they didn't end up tendering a contract to, is now on the Detroit Tigers on a 1-year deal, kind of a bounce back, prove myself kind of deal with the team that's not going to be in contention next year. I don't think the Astros are really going to miss him that much. It does hurt their starting depth a little bit, but they have the pieces to kind of bounce back. Additionally, Luke Gregerson is now a St. Louis Cardinal. He was probably the most inconsistent reliever on that Houston Astros squad. So again, Astros are probably not going to miss him that much. as far as signings go, the Astros picked up Joe Smith, 2-year, $15 million. He had an okay year with the Indians last year. Considerably better than Luke Gregerson, though, who I guess you would slot him into the situations that Luke Gregerson would be in. They also signed former closer Hector Rondon, who had played with the Cubs. He had a bad year last year, so he was looking for a specific bounce back year. And like I said, with the volatility of relievers, you never know these days. So these are kind of minor moves that the Astros are doing right now to kind of shuffle the deck, so to say, on probably the one weakness that they had in the playoffs last year, which was their bullpen. What do you have any opinions on any of these moves?
I mean, not really. I mean, I don't think this makes Houston any less of a contender that they were prior to the offseason. I mean, that being said, I mean, the Hector Rondon deal, that one, I feel like they could have gone out and gotten a better reliever instead of necessarily having to gamble on someone trying to have a bounce back. So that's the only comment I really have on this. Outside of that, like, I mean, I get why they let Fiers walk. I understand why they let Luke Gregerson walk. You know, and at the end of the day, these both of these guys can say that they were champions, which is good, you know, for them.
Fair enough at that point. Side note, by the way, we can talk about the Rule 5 ones in the shoutouts.
Sure, yeah, let's do that.
Okay. And I guess we'll finish off with some of the other moves that were made during the winter meetings, and I can give you all my winners and losers for this week. Like I said earlier, that the starting pitching market really hasn't moved that much. One that has kind of gone are these, back of the rotation style type players. Tyler Chatwood is now in the Chicago Cubs. He signed a 3-year, $38 million contract with the $2 million option. I personally think it's too much. Tyler Chatwood had a decent couple seasons with the Colorado Rockies, and I mean, we all know what the Coors effect does to him, and he has good road splits. It's just I feel like 3 years, $40 million is too much for a back end player. So I'm wondering what the Cubs are necessarily doing there in their attempts to replace Jake Arrieta. They also received Brandon Morrow, the relief pitcher, with 2 years, $21 million. Decent reliever. I wouldn't call him the cream of the crop. There's the top market relievers are still on the board at this point. With a lot of, I guess, second and third level relievers have already gone. For instance, Pat Neshek and Tommy Hunter, both signed contracts with Philadelphia, 2 years for both of them. Fernando Rodney, a former closer for a lot of different teams, signed a contract with the Twins on a 1-year deal, trying to, scoot up before his career is over. Mets get Anthony Swarzak. Washington re-signs Brandon Kinsler, former All-Star, or last year's All-Star. So not exciting relieving deals. Like, you're looking for Greg Holland and Wade Davis that are still on the board, and potentially any team can really take at this point. But these are significant minor upgrades. These are minor upgrades to some of these teams, and especially interesting to me is the moves that Philadelphia had made. With the Neshek and Tommy Hunter. They also add Carlos Santana, 3 years, $60 million. Personally, think that's really a lot of money for someone who is basically limited to just first base at this point. And you're an NL team, you can't just stick him at DH. He's below average defensively. He's only going to get worse.
But he's so smooth.
Yeah, he is smooth, but but he's stuck at one position being smooth. So it I see the reason why Philadelphia is doing it. They need some kind of a veteran presence and big names. They're probably a 1 year away from being competitive at this point. So they need to have some sort of veteran leadership to kind of mold some of these young players. It's just that's a lot of money for a guy who can only play first base. And when you have an upcoming player like Rhys Hoskins, um, who currently plays first base, you're gonna have to tell him to move now, so that your vet can play the one position he can. And a couple other deals that went down. The Twins signed a 2-year deal with Michael Pineda, starter, who just had Tommy John last season, and he'll be out for the entire year. And it kind of an interesting prove it to me in I guess the year after the second part of the deal, the second year of the deal. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's the Minnesota Twins. You can never know with them. And Stephen Piscotty is now Stephen Piscotty is now has been traded from St. Louis to Oakland. It seems to me that this has just been a large exodus of talent from NL teams to AL teams at this point, and I'm not saying it's kind of like the Eastern Conference to Western Conference in the NBA, but it's kind of strange to me how there are a lot of teams that are going to the AL at this point. So overall, you can pin the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Angels as the big winners, I guess you could say, for landing the big stars that highlighted the offseason. And other teams like the Cubs and Phillies have made their minor incremental improvements, but the Marlins are obvious losers of the last week and a half. Basically, as a fan, you're figuring out your team is done for quite a while. And the other loser I'd say is the Seattle Mariners, who, like I said, were favorites to land Shohei Ohtani, and they come up empty-handed. And the next line of business for the Mariners is to find more rotation pieces to substitute in and to put behind a declining Felix Hernandez, and they really have not made initiative so far into doing that. And with the Angels and the Astros getting significantly better at this point, or with the Angels getting significantly better to getting close to matching the Astros, it feels like the Mariners are starting to fade, or could potentially fade at this point. And I think their inability to act in the last week and a half is really costing them. At least the Rangers have made some minor moves, so I think that's what puts them above them. But the Mariners need to get going. The Mariners need to get going at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, nice shout out with the minor move.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on your end?
No, I think you pretty much nailed it. I mean, I would say another big loser in some semblance has to be the Cardinals and the Giants for not being able to land Stanton. And with the Cardinals, it's interesting to see them sort of at this point kind of sell off some assets. Or although like they still ended up getting Marcell Ozuna, so it's hard to say that they're like really hard losers on this. And I think that the Scotty trade was also due to just like getting Scotty closer to home due to some family issues. So that's nice.
Yeah. I completely understand that. I just don't think that the magnitude of their loss is as much as the Marlins or the opportunity that they could have had with the Mariners. So, and like I said, this offseason has a long while to play out. Like I said, the starting pitching market has not really moved that much. The offensive market really hasn't moved that much. It's just been a bunch of reliever deals kind of at this point. So we'll have to see.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's still a long way to go for the rest of the off season, and it's still even farther off till the start of spring training. So still plenty of time for things to change, things to morph, things to blow up. So we'll keep you all posted on those. But let's now move on to the NFL. The Cowboys got a win this past weekend against a bad Giants team, but it wouldn't be the Cowboys without some minor controversy, in so much that they were tied going into the fourth quarter. I mean, what was your take from this game, Evan?
That's not controversy. What are you talking about?
Controversial to me, man. Okay, fine. I'll start.
Yeah.
I'll restart that. Let's now move on to the NFL. The Cowboys got a win over the Giants, taking the season sweep over a really bad Giants team. However, the Cowboys kind of weren't able to pull away until the fourth quarter. What was your takeaway from this game, Evan?
I mean, scoring wise, they weren't able to pull away. I feel like they had more of an advantage throughout most of the game. Eli was so the Giants kind of went through this weird phase of firing their for benching their quarterback, then firing their coach, then starting their quarterback again. So I at this point I'm not even sure what the Giants were thinking when they benched Eli to start Geno Smith. It's obvious that they're tanking and trying to reload, but this team just looks like it's in shambles. And again, the Cowboys eventually took advantage of it. Dak had a really good game, probably his best passing game in a long time. Yards wise, it was the most he had in his career. Had some issues in the first quarter, like he's been having for a little bit, but turned out really nicely, especially in the last half of the game. Receivers, I feel like Dak could have had an even better game had his receivers caught as many balls as they were thrown to them. Dez had a couple that he dropped. Terrence Williams had one that he dropped. One of the back end wide receivers, I'm not sure whether it was Bryce Butler or Switzer, had a ball dropped. I mean, his receivers got to pick Dak up at this point. They could have made these catches that could have thrown the game to the Cowboys earlier on than they actually did. So there was that, and I guess the other thing is that pulled this Cowboys team away was this defense was solid again. Sean Lee, with him in the lineup, is just a complete difference maker. He had like 17 tackles. He was in charge of that linebacking crew. Really stuffed that Giants run, giving Eli more pressure to pass, and Eli's stats just got worse and worse as the game went on. So it was really interesting to see Sean Lee being the commander, or the Jerry Jones war daddy that he was supposed to be. What did you see in this game that really stood out to you?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Sean Lee coming back and really taking command of this defense is always going to be a huge plus. I mean, like he's essentially a defensive coordinator out on the field, and I mean the adjustments he's able to make for this team, and it was sort of his sense of guiding this team going forward. Is always a phenomenal thing. It's just, I mean, like you wish he'd be able to do it every game instead of struggling through injuries. I would say the biggest takeaway though is the young defensive backs that we have: Chidobe Awuzie, Jordan Lewis, even Xavier Woods had phenomenal games, helping shut down granted a banged up receiving core of the Giants, but nonetheless, I mean they it's a continuation of the performance that they gave against the Washington team. I mean, part of it is just that both Jordan Lewis and Chidobe Awuzie are great at playing aggressively without drawing penalties. I mean, these people, these two, are so good at draping over
assignments and following them as closely as possible. I mean, Jordan Lewis is just phenomenal at staying in the pocket, hip pocket of his receiver. And then once the ball is thrown their way, they aggressively play the ball. They don't play the person, they play the ball, and are able to knock it out of the way. I mean, they both have, like the past 2 games, have had an increased amount of pass deflections, more so than whoever they were replacing prior to that. And then Xavier Woods has been laying on the wood and really playing well with stopping the run and playing pretty decent in coverage. I will also point out that Kayvon Frazier has actually been a pretty decent difference maker, especially in the run game, being sort of the designated safety for stopping the run, and has really sort of helped clean up for Byron Jones's struggles in that area. I will also give a huge shout out to Rod Smith, who had a huge game against the Giants, both in receiving and rushing. I mean, he had a big play of, I believe, 82 yards on a catch and run. Just basically catching a pass up the seam and just taking it to the house. I mean, like this, he looks like he's probably the backup running back of the future for this Dallas Cowboys team, and yeah, he did a great job with it. Outside of that, there's really Demarcus Lawrence. He didn't get a sack, but he caused so much disruptions on that with that terrible offensive line of the Giants. That he was considered the arguably the best defensive player for the week on any team, considering the performance. But that being said, it's time to move on now to the Oakland Raiders. Do you have anything else to add?
No.
Oh, that's okay. So let's now move on to the Oakland Raiders game. Again, this is an Oakland Raiders team that is struggling. They're going to be missing their best receiver in Amari Cooper, as well as missing out on defensive end Mario Edwards. But they also won't have to be playing against David Irving, who is going to be out for this game. But what do you think is going to happen on Sunday?
I mean, this is one of those games where the Cowboys' backs are against the wall. They lose and they have feasibly no shot. Even not mathematically, they still do. To make the playoffs. So their backs against the wall. This is the last game without Zeke Elliott. You have to think that the Cowboys are salivating at the mouth for being able to right the ship somewhat for this game, and this is the team to do it on. This is the easiest game that they have left. So the opportunity is there for them to take it, and being a Sunday night game, and they've historically performed well on Sunday night in the last couple seasons. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Cowboys to go to 8-6 and to live for another week.
I'm going to take the Cowboys too, although don't discount the Oakland Raiders. I mean, yeah, they're at 5-9, but I mean they're still competing for a wild card spot just because of how bad the wild card situation is in the AFC. But even with all that said, I just can't see the Oakland Raiders being able to mount a good enough challenge to this Cowboys team that seems to be at least hitting its stride without Zeke, and seems to have been able to put it together since the suspension. I will say that this Oakland Raiders team might find success running the ball more. Just again, missing out on David Irving is going to hurt this team, this Cowboys team. But nonetheless, I think it's I would definitely take the Cowboys in this game. But yeah, let's go ahead.
It's interesting to think that actually the point doesn't stand anymore because we're not talking about the wild cards anymore, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. So let's now move on to the Houston Texans, who lost
to a bad team in San Francisco this past week. But I mean, unfortunately, that was not the big story from this game. The big story is the injuries and just some of the scary situations that we saw. I mean, what's your take on Bill O'Brien having let Tom Savage play that game?
Well, I mean, if you look at the video, it's kind of a scary deal with Tom Savage just getting crushed out there, and you can see him kind of like twitching on the field, and going in for the concussion protocol, and then allowing him to come back. Like, I don't know. Like, is TJ Yates really that bad that you have to rush Tom Savage out of concussion protocol? And the fact that we're even talking about the atrocities committed to Tom Savage at this point is just kind of laughable. I don't know. The NFL, we've known the NFL is such a dangerous game, and you've gone on a rant on this podcast plenty of times about how the NFL isn't really treating its players with enough care and attention in regards to injuries. Suddenly we're now going to focus on it because it's an average player that plays for one of the teams that we cover on this podcast. I don't know. To me, it's just one of those things that's like, oh, it happened again. I guess, we'll just pay attention to it for like 5 minutes and then forget about it because the next controversy is coming up, and it's a microcosm of a lot of things in society these days. But when it's dealing with someone's health and success after they leave the NFL at this point and how healthy they'll be in their lives, it's kind of a scary thing to think about.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and on top of it too, you have CJ Fedorowicz, who also got a concussion, and I mean, unfortunately for him, that this might be the end of the road for him as an NFL player. And so yeah, it's just it's I mean, it's pretty scary to see. I mean, like definitely, I mean, like if you haven't seen the video yet, I mean, I mean, it's all there on the field, and it's just not. I mean, like I could understand, like maybe it's like, oh, he said that he was ready, like let him go out. But I mean, at a certain point, you like especially if you're Houston Texans and you're not, like in terms of just like pure football, just from a pure football perspective, like you're the Houston Texans and you're not really in contention for anything. Like you're not going to be able to get a high first round pick. You're not going to be able to make the playoffs. So I mean, don't rush back Tom Savage. But nonetheless, I mean, like it's much more interesting. It's much more of a. I mean, do you think there's a trend in terms of Houston Texans having so many people getting injured? That maybe they should take a look into their health staff, or is it just like one of those times when it's just like, as you said, like it's like an incredibly violent sport, and it's just that the Houston Texans got really unlucky with the amount.
Yeah, I could never say that there's a specific team that is injury ridden and cursed or per se, kind of like the New York Mets were last year. Other teams in other sports. Like the Chicago Bulls with Derrick Rose kind of thing. But there has been a lot of injuries this year for some high profile players. With Deshaun Watson getting hurt, now Tom Savage getting hurt. On our side, Carson Wentz just tore his ACL. For a Philadelphia team that had all but clinched the NFC East and are still competitive and getting that first round bye. They've lost their quarterback for the rest of the season and the playoffs, and they suddenly look like a vulnerable team now. And that's probably the highest profile injury that's happened this year. There's been a bunch of others for other teams. It's just it's scary to think it could happen to anybody at this point.
Absolutely. But yeah, let's preview. Let's try to at least preview the next week. Let's see, who are the Texans playing?
if Quan were here, he'd be like, "Oh, I don't even give a shit about next week."
Oh man, yeah, I don't like talking about this team. Ooh. Yeah. Oh, they're playing the Jaguars. Okay, and so this Sunday, the Texans are going to be playing a hot Jaguars team who just came off of upsetting the Seattle Seahawks. Yeah, I mean this Jaguars team has one of the best defenses in the league. They're actually for the first time ever. It's a defense that leads the league in takeaways and sacks. And yeah, no, I mean uh, this is an interesting. Uh, uh, this will be an interesting matchup for sure in terms of just like how much this Jaguars team is going to win by.
Yeah, I don't see any way that with this
Yeah.
hobbled offense that Houston has against one of the best defenses in the country, it's gonna be really tough for Houston to win this one. And I wouldn't be surprised if Houston ekes out something because Jacksonville does have Blake Bortles as their quarterback.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Jacksonville has an easy window to take this and stay competitive in between them and Tennessee. Like you don't know who's going to win that division, but they're going to be a force to be in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and they might actually have two representatives of the AFC South with them in Tennessee. So yeah, good luck to them. But let's now move on to the NBA. The Rockets are arguably the hottest team in the entire association. And I mean they've now won 12 in a row. They're undefeated when Chris Paul is playing. They're 13-0 with Chris Paul. Yeah, I mean this is just, and not only that, not only they're the number one offensive team, they're now the number 5 defensive team, and just a huge turnaround from last year. Even though, and which is saying something considering that last year they were already an incredible team. It's I mean, they beat the Blazers in Portland 124-117 to extend the win streak to 9 games. Chris Paul had 26 points and 7 assists. Harden had 48 points, and Ariza had 13 points and 4 steals. Then they beat the Pelicans for 10th straight win. I mean, granted, this was against a Pelicans team that did not have Anthony Davis due to injury. But even still, I mean, kudos to them for pulling off that win. And then they destroyed the Hornets on Wednesday.
12 points is not destroyed, by the way.
Okay, I watched the beginning of that game and they were up like 25 points.
So they almost choked, is what you're saying.
Maybe, yeah. No, wait, no. Okay, let me start. Then they beat the Hornets 108-96 for 11th straight win. It really wasn't that close. They were like this Houston Rockets team was able to build a 25-point lead by the midpoint of the second quarter. But Chris Paul was awesome with 31 points and 11 assists, 2 steals, led a 25-0 run to end the first, begin the second. Eric Gordon had 17 points off the bench, and Nene played decently well against Dwight Howard. Unfortunately, with this game, Luke Mba Mute left the game with a shoulder injury, and he might be out for 2 to 3 weeks if they're lucky. And then last night, this past Friday, they destroyed the Spurs 124-109 for the 12th straight win. Chris Paul just going off, 28 points, 8 assists, 7 steals, just completely unfair. Clint Capella got the double-double with 18 points and 10 rebounds. And I mean this is a strong Rockets team. So yeah, it's nice. It's, I guess, good to see that out of them. They're now going to be playing the Milwaukee Bucks, Utah, Lakers, and the Clippers this upcoming week. As for the flip side of that, the Mavs have at least been kind of terrible. Although they did beat the Spurs. In Kawhi's debut for the season, they were able to upset the Spurs. I don't understand that game. I don't know how that came about. They've also not been without Dennis Smith Jr. due to injury, which has been which has been sad to see, just because this was supposed to be a year in which we focused mostly on him developing. But they won, and Dirk still had a pretty good game against the Golden State Warriors. I think he went 18 points, 9 rebounds. And he's been pretty effective considering he's now 40. So, and then speaking of effective, JJ Barea is having a career year. Just coming off the bench, he's been averaging in 15 points in the last week or so. Been playing well. He might be an interesting candidate to trade away at the deadline. See what you can get for him. And then next week they play against San Antonio, see if they can keep up the good work against them. And then they play Phoenix, which will be an interesting game just because it's going to be against two bottom feeding teams, and whoever wins kind of loses in a way. And then you have Detroit and Miami. So that pretty much wraps it up with the Mavs. You have anything else to add?
I guess the only thing is it's interesting how the 4 best players on the Mavs are the 2 oldest guys and the 2 youngest guys. So it's kind of weird how that missing middle is really causing this team to tank at this point.
Yeah, missing middle, just like the housing in Austin.
In every major city, really.
That's true. That's
for the urban planning podcast we also later on.
Yeah,
that may be a joke.
Yeah, maybe, just maybe. But yeah, let's move on.
I may or may not cut all that out.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, let's move on to a little bit of college basketball. The Longhorns lost to Michigan, 59-52. They were down 12 points at the half, but what's your take? I wasn't able to really watch it, but I did follow along on the radio, and it definitely sounded like this team struggled to score on any sort of consistent basis. Is that your takeaway from this?
I wasn't able to watch this. Am I muted or not? Oh no, I'm not. I wasn't really able to watch this game at all, so I couldn't tell for this specific game. But it sounds to me like this is a typical Texas problem. Really have not had a consistent scoring team since the days of Avery Bradley and Tristan Thompson and Kevin, the late aughts of the Texas teams. So it would make sense for me for this kind of game to happen. The Longhorns have actually had a weird kind of seasons where they've gone up big at the beginning and kind of lost leads, to Duke and to VCU specifically. And this team was kind of an opposite, kind of what happens in the last couple seasons, where they do end up falling behind early and clawing their way in some semblance to kind of go back. And this game, I guess one of the deals or the issues was that Andrew Jones, who had taken a heavy fall in the VCU game, was going to be out for the next couple weeks with the sprained wrist. So it's, who's going to be behind Andrew Jones in this game? It was Eric Davis, who went back to last year Eric Davis and was just awful from the field. The guards that they have on the bench just have not really shown a semblance to be a starter on this team. Fabris has been kind of lukewarm. He is a freshman. Andrew Jones Eric Davis really hasn't shown that much improvement over last year. And, he had such a clunker of the game. It's probably time for him to move on and to start the next guard at this point. You can't win every single game with just Osakowski and Mo Bamba, who both had pretty solid games, but, the whole point is college basketball is more of a team game than a lot of people are led to believe. So hopefully Andrew Jones gets back and is able to really fill this hole at guard that is really able to fill this hole at the guard position. The Texas is playing Louisiana Tech. That game will be finished by the time this podcast is out, and hopefully they'll have made the adjustments to pull out a winning team and to kind of right the ship before Big 12 play starts at the end of the month.
Yeah, no, I mean, especially coming off that PK 60 tournament where they're able to hang and play really well against some ranked teams, including the number 1 team at the time. I mean, it's just, we know this team is capable of so much more, and we want to see that happen. It's just, it's just a matter of working out the kinks and making sure that they're ready for Big 12 play.
For the correct people and for the bench players to fulfill the roles that they were supposed to do and be that next man up mentality, and pretend like Andrew Jones' injury didn't actually matter kind of way of thinking.
For sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But let's now move on to shout outs. First shout out. I know this guy's a rival, but congrats to Baker Mayfield on winning the Heisman. That's a very good job. Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty obvious that some of the other candidates that were going up against Baker didn't really hold a candle. Baker was unequivocally better than everyone else in the field, leading that Oklahoma team to the Big 12 championship and to the college football playoffs. And I guess his really only sidestep was against Iowa State. That's what you need as a Heisman, is you can't have one bad game.
Yeah. That, and also his little gestures in Baylor, although he apologized for that. Like, that was, he's had a very good season. So congrats to him. Also, shout outs for the Dallas Stars, who are currently now in 4th in the Central Division, but hold the wild card number 1 spot in the Western Conference. They've gone 9-4 in the last 13 games. They lost to Vegas.
Hold on. They lost last night, so that number's wrong now.
9-5. They're now 9-5 in their last, or 8-5 in the last. They're 9-5 in their last 14 games. Shout out. We also shout out to the Dallas Stars, who are currently in 4th in the Central Division, but hold on to the wild card number 1 spot in Western Conference. They're now 9-5 in the last 14 games, with a loss to Vegas and then beating both New York teams, the Rangers and the Islanders, until last night. They lost to the New Jersey Devils 2-5. Not great, but okay. Kari Lehtinen had his 300th game win, the 300th win of his career. Unfortunately, he then got decimated in the Devils game. That was a little bit unfortunate. This team seems to at least has a playoff spot right now. So they just need to keep improving. So much has been already put into this team, especially from this offseason. So, yeah, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's inconsistency, where they would spat off a couple wins in a row, a couple losses in a row. They had some issues on the road earlier this year. Just went through a road trip where they proved everyone wrong and couldn't lose a game to save their life. So it's just a matter of consistency in the goaltending. Ben Bishop started off strong and was kind of fallen off. Kari Lehtinen started off really weak and kind of turned out average. This team used to be such an offensive juggernaut. Needs more offensive firepower. Players like Radek Faksa and Matthias Janmark need to step up and play at a level that's kind of more equivocal to the big stars of Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn and the ever so present John Klingberg on defense.
For sure. But yeah, let's move on to I guess shout out to MLS, I guess, who's also having their off season. Yeah, I mean the Dynamo. Let's see.
Are you kidding me? You said it wrong again.
Okay. Like that's how little I care about MLS.
Dynamo.
Don't half-ass my MLS updates, please. Okay.
Says. I mean, wait, was that a Quan quote right there?
That was a Quan quote, yeah.
Don't half-ass my MLS updates, please.
Too late now, man.
I would just say, just choose a couple of them, or don't go into. I don't know.
Yeah. Man, I'm not fucking reading this Chris Seitz thing. Jesus fucking Christ. So also shout outs to the Dynamo for signing acquiring Arturo Alvarez from the Chicago Fire for a second-round pick in the 2019 Super Draft. He's a Houston native who has 32 goals and 30 assists in 11 MLS seasons, so seasons that are in right there. They have Albert Ellis, who they acquired on a full transfer from CF Monterrey.
Keep going. That's all the information you really need.
Yeah, 10 goals. Well, you got 10 goals and 4 assists this year while on loan, so pretty good. And they also signed Chris Seitz, FC Dallas's keeper last year. I mean, like I guess they're trying to get him to start. I mean, they've let go of all 3 of their goalkeepers, so I mean, it looks like he's their starter for the rest of the time. And then you have FC Dallas, who traded away Walker Zimmerman, who was a promising defenseman, as well as the number 11 position in MLS allocation ranking to LAFC for $250,000 in general allocation money. What? Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you, y'all listeners. I have no idea what I just said.
No, just shut up. Don't just say the Dallas traded this thing for $250,000, and that's all.
Dollars, really yeah, $250,000. And they also re-signed Maynor Figueroa.
Hold on, and then redo it. You can't just be like, yeah, exactly what he said. Just redo the FC Dallas thing.
Also, FC Dallas traded away defender Walker Zimmerman, who has actually gotten some reps with the U.S. team. So, I mean, that's a very big trade. They also traded away the number 11 position in MLS allocation rankings to LAFC for $250,000 in general allocation money. They also re-signed Maynor Figueroa. So that's a good, I guess. And then Darlington Nagbe, and in other news, Darlington Nagbe was traded from Portland to Atlanta to, I guess, signal a Portland rebuild. I mean, Darlington Nagbe was getting quite a few reps and was playing pretty well for the U.S. national team. I mean, granted, it's a U.S. national team that did not qualify for World Cup, so take that with a grain of salt, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, and also big news, Chris Del Conte, former TCU athletic court AD, is now the Texas AD. And so kind of excited for this one because you have to look at TCU's track record, and they have a better football team, they have a better basketball team, they have a better baseball team than Texas does right now. And so hopefully he can help rebuild those guys. I mean, like, is that your take?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, coaching carousel, administrative carousel that Texas has seemed to go through ever since, we even got to UT. So, throw stuff at a wall, see what sticks. But at this point, getting TCU's guys is, I can't believe we're actually saying that we're plucking TCU's guys at this point.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean, that's just what happens when, especially considering how unfortunate this whole team has been. This whole program has been. Just not good. You know, and
I have one more shout out.
Yeah, go ahead. What's your shout out?
We forgot the Roll 5 ones, so.
Oh right, yeah.
So I'll splice this in somewhere. Shout out to players taken in the Roll 5 draft. Usually the thing that ends the winter meetings is the Roll 5 draft. Astros plucked Anthony Gose from the Texas Rangers. He is a two-way player who's played a little bit of who's done a little bit of pitching last year. Rangers signed him to be a two-way player for a minor league deal, but the Astros ended up plucking him anyway, which is kind of weird because now the Astros have to put him on the 25-man roster, and offer him back if he doesn't make the team. They could have just signed a minor league deal with Anthony Gose if they wanted him. So, shout out to them for doing that. The Rangers themselves were traded a Roll 5 pick from the Phillies in an outfielder. Where did I put it? The Rangers were given a Rule 5 pick from the White Sox, Carlos Toki, a more defensive-minded outfielder. The scouting on him is that he's a plus glove and arm, has decent speed, not so good base running, and awful power. I kind of see him as kind of a better defensive version of Delano DeShields with less contact. I don't know if he'll stick as a fourth outfielder for the rest of the season, but it's a decent gamble to take, especially for a team that's looking for more defense in the outfield. So shout out to them.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, anything else to add?
I'm tired and I can't wait to edit this shit.
Same, man. I want you guys to visit our website, TuneAtesOnSports.com. Also like us on Facebook at TuneAtesOnSports. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play Music, where you'll get a notification as soon as we release our new episodes. Also, we're always trying to improve, so leave us a comment and send us any questions. You can reach us via email at tuneatesonsports@gmail.com. Evan, I'll thank you for stopping by and talk to you later.
Yep.